I'd just like to welcome everyone to the Women in Firefighting session today in the virtual arena. We would have loved to have been there in person, but unfortunately we aren't able to be this time. So my name is Quinn Kramer. I'm the current president of Women in Firefighting Australasia, and joining me today is Stephanie Louie, who is our vice president. Women in Firefighting Australasia, if you haven't heard, is an organisation devoted to promoting equity across our sector to empower all women to embrace their strengths. Our mission, in collaboration with individuals, communities and emergency services, we build confidence and empower women to achieve their full potential to be supported as women in their roles within our sector. Today, we're going to be giving you a presentation based on a survey that we conducted recently in regards to PPC. Waste that.
Hi everyone, thanks for that, Quinn. As Quinn said, I'm Stephanie, I'm the current Vice President of WAFA, and I'm here today to take you through some of the results we had from our survey. So anecdotally, we know that, well, we hear that female firefighters have issues with their gear. So we hear a lot around issues with being able to access small enough sizing to fit. We hear issues around, PPC being of the wrong cut for a female shaped body, in particular being able to accommodate breasts and hips. And we hear about women asking for custom made PPC but being denied it, being told, you know what, love, it's not a fashion show. But to our knowledge, there hasn't actually been a survey of female firefighters to understand the perceptions of their gear. Are these stories we're hearing just one-offs, or are they something sort of more pervasive around female firefighters and their ability to use their gear? So what we did was we developed a survey and we validated that survey with a panel of male and female firefighters from multiple agencies across both career and volunteer ranks, just to make sure that our terminology is consistent throughout. And the survey ended up being quite long. It consisted of 75 questions covering structural, bushfire and duty wear. And it also covered questions around access to female-specific PPC and also custom-made gear. So how did we go? We had nearly 300 respondents from female firefighters across 6 countries, and these included representation from career, retained and volunteer ranks across 23 fire services across the world. The majority of the firefighters came from Australia. So you can see 2 graphs on this slide. On the bottom left, what you can see is which states our respondents came from. And you can see that the majority of our respondents came from Victoria, with nearly a third or just over a third of our respondents coming from Victoria, and New South Wales being the second biggest state. The graph on the right shows the years of service these female firefighters had. You can see that there's a pretty good range of experiences across the service, with really that 1 to 10 years as the most, having the most respondents. But what you can also see here is that we actually had really good representation across that really very experienced range, with over 20 respondents having over 25 years of service. Note, as we go through this data, we've actually chosen deliberately not to disaggregate the results at a service level. This survey isn't about naming and shaming any particular agency or service around what they do and don't have access to. It's more around sort of the more pervasive themes that we see around certain parts or certain bits of gear. So what did we find? And the 3 main points we found was that really overwhelmingly women believe that their gear does not fit them well. They believe that they need to work harder than their male colleagues due to the fit of their gear, and they believe that they would be more effective with better fitting gear. So the first question we asked was around access to female-specific PPC. And what we found was that there's really, really mixed access to female-specific PPC. And unsurprisingly, access to female PPC really, or female-specific PPC, really varied from service line to service line. So if a service provided access to female-specific PPC, what's pretty unsurprising there is that the number of women accessing it was higher than if a service didn't provide access. But what is also surprising that the number of women that have female-specific PPC is quite low. The most common items that women have in female-specific PPC are duty wear, so both shirts and pants, and bushfire pants. What's interesting here is that although in structural PPC, the number of women that have female-specific pants and jackets are almost equal, somewhere around the sort of 35 mark. If you look at bushfire PPC, women are much, much more likely to have women-specific pants than a jacket, with over a third more women having female-specific pants than wearing a female-specific jacket. Now, what this doesn't tell us, though, is whether that's because services are only offering access to female-specific pants, which is skewing this number, or whether women are finding, in some cases, that the men's jacket fits them better, so they're choosing to wear that. The least common items accessed in a female-specific PPC are helmets, boots, and gloves. If we look at access to custom-made PPC here, we know that custom-made PPC is really an option to get correctly fitting PPC when standard PPC doesn't fit. It's not really all that widely adopted. So only 4 women reported having custom-made bushfire gear versus 31 women reporting to have custom-made structural gear. So structure pants and jackets are much more likely to be custom-made than bushfire gear. What's also unclear here, though, is that whether more women are requesting and gaining access to structure jackets and pants or structure PPC because they have less access to female PPC. So if you look in the previous slide, you'll recall that women are much, much more likely to have access to female-specific bushfire gear, which then might be driving the number of women needing custom-made bushfire gear to be lower. What's also interesting here is that over 6% of women actually reported requesting custom-made PPC, but being denied this. So let's go on to some of the details around specific parts of the PPC. And what we found when we looked at the results is that although we asked questions around specific kinds of pants, so we asked questions around bushfire pants, structure pants, duty wear, the actual issues that we found really cut across what the people were using the PPC for and really sort of aligned itself along the sort of type of garment it was. So we've chosen to report our results this way. When we look at pants, really, the main issues around pants, and specifically non-female specific pants, really seem to stem from needing to size up to accommodate the hips. And what this results in is the crotch of the pants ending up sitting too low, the length of the leg being too long because they're built for a bigger person, the legs of the pants being too baggy, the waist being too big, and knee pads being in the wrong place. If we look at duty wear, although most women had access to female-specific duty wear, there were lots and lots of concerns around the appropriateness of the function of these garments. In particular, a lot of women talked about these pants being too tight and too low slung. So they consistently told us that they weren't built for people with an athletic build, as in people that have legs, making these pants really tight and really a bit inappropriate for work. And this is a quote we had from one of our participants, is that, like, my duty wear pants are so low slung that when I bend over, I show my undies. And that's not really what you want to be doing when you're trying to be professional. If we move on to jackets, most of the issues with PPC jackets, or again, non-female specific PPC jackets, seem to come from needing to accommodate breasts and hips. So if you need to accommodate your breasts and hips, you've got 2 options. You can either size up to get your breasts and hips into the jacket and make it baggy everywhere else, or you can size down and then all of a sudden not be able to get the jacket done up. So the main issues were that people would size up and then they'd end up with, their jacket arms being too long and the body of the jacket being too wide and the length of the jacket being too long because they've had to size up to get their hips and breasts in it. Alternatively, people are sizing correctly for the rest of their body and ending up with a jacket that doesn't fit over their hips. So the press studs undo or the zips break, or it can't be done up, or they do it up and then they hitch it over their hips to get it done up. And I think this quote from one of our participants really sums it up really well, is that I have to pick whether my jacket fits my arms or my chest. I can't have both. I've just got to pick one. If we move on to helmets, I guess unsurprisingly, no one actually reported having a female-specific helmet or a custom-made helmet. But the themes around helmets were again pretty consistent, and they came down to two main points. And that came down to, getting a helmet to fit and sit properly when you've got long hair. And the second one is access to small enough sizing. So it's that idea with helmets that one size fits most, or like we call it, one size fits some. And so what a lot of women talked about is that the harness of the helmet accommodates to an extent, but that you're still wearing a very large helmet in a very small harness, which then leads to weight issues and fit issues. A couple of quotes here, my head is small at 50 centimetres, so they packed the headband to make it firm enough, but all of a sudden, but the packing's uneven and it hurts. Another person's got told, I was told I would get a new insert, but it didn't go because my helmet didn't go small enough, but what I actually got was foam to pack it out. So they're still wearing a helmet that is designed for a much larger head, but then just trying to make it do. Looking at boots and gloves. Boots and gloves, again, our results are pretty consistent, and what we had were three main issues. The width of the boot, so a lot of women talked about having boots that would fit them lengthwise, but just being way too wide for narrow feet. The second one was weight, and I think this is probably a pretty consistent thing across firefighting boots, whether you're male or female. But the third one was really access to small enough sizing, and lots of women talked about having to wear 2 or even 3 pairs of socks to actually get their boots to fit. If we look at gloves, again, issues were really around that access to small enough sizing. Lots and lots of gloves are provided in a one size fits some category, but also the bulkiness. So where gloves were available in multiple sizes, they're still on the same materials. So as you size smaller, they become equally more bulky. So why is this all important? So I think the key thing here is that respondents really believe that the fit of their PPC hinders their work. PPC is supposed to keep us safe and help us do our work, not really hinder it. And this is especially prevalent in structural PPC and least prevalent in duty and station wear. But when we think about the sorts of things we do in duty and station wear, this is probably why people are finding that it doesn't really hinder their work. Lots and lots of our respondents agreed with the statement, I think I need to work harder to be as efficient as my male colleagues due to the fit of my PPC. Again, this is most prevalent across that structural PPC domain, with lots and lots of our respondents either agreeing or strongly agreeing with this statement. And finally, most respondents agreed with the statement that with better fitting PPC, that they would be more effective. And we saw this both across structural and bushfire PPC domains. So I think that gives us some really interesting things to have a think about. Quinn, did you want to take us through maybe why some of this or how some of this plays out in practice?
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So certainly in regards to the structural wear, the fit, when we start at the top, when we looked at pants first. So pants, first step, stepping up into the fire truck, that can be an issue, and you also want to be able to dress fast, so you need your gear to fit effectively when you step into it to get into the truck. If you have to lift up your leg up high to get into some appliances or even climbing ladders or over fences, the lower crotch length can really impede how high you can lift your leg and your movement in that respect. When we're talking with jackets over the top, so generally with structural gear and the same with bushland wildfire, there's always, it allows for an overlap because you don't want that exposure to skin. If you bend over, you don't want your jacket riding up. With the overlap, having your pants tight around your hips, having the waist of your jacket tight around your hips, it can really impede your ability to bend over and do some of the specific roles that you need to do in structural firefighting. You need to get down low quite a lot to escape the heat. And so this can really impact your movements when your gear doesn't fit effectively. And then you've also got the bulkiness of a BA on your back as well. So if you've had to upsize your jacket specifically to fit your hips, then when you put a BA on, you get the bulkiness of the jacket because you want your BA to fit tight around your shoulders and your waist. So then you draw in and you're getting excess accumulation of material at those points as well. Gloves, you want that real good dexterity with your hands, regardless of pretty much the role you're doing on the fire ground. You want to be able to have a good dexterity, be able to grip things efficiently, just to be safe on the ground, and especially with boots as well. Structurally, at wildland lengths, the issue that we hear a lot when people are having to wear 3 socks to make their boots fit effectively, it's generally to stop blisters. Blisters are a big issue that a lot of people talk about. And once you sort of start to get those blisters where it can make it quite painful for you on the fire ground to be able to move around safely and effectively. And also these days, one thing that we really want to look at and focus on is there's been a lot more research and study done on the impacts of toxicity of smoke and cancer. So if you've got ill-fitting gear where these toxins can make their way to your skin because your gear is not fitting correctly, that raises and increases your risks throughout your career. So it's really important that we enable firefighters from a safety sense, regardless of gender, to have equipment that really fits them well and is fit for purpose.
Yeah, and I think in the volunteer ranks as well, or in the bushfire sense, a lot of that brings through. You think about sort of the crotch of the pants being quite low, and you're walking through the bush with a pack in your back and a chainsaw, and you come to a tree, you've got to step over, you've got to put down the chainsaw, then you hitch your pants up, you climb over the tree, then you have to pick it back up. It's just all added effort. And then we've also got in volunteer ranks the added issue of helmets and long hair. So if you're going on shift as a career firefighter, you can plan your hair a little bit better than if you're a volunteer rolling out of bed at 2 a.m. to attend a pager call. So all of a sudden you don't want the added issue of having to sit there and try and get into your gear and then try and braid your hair, because that's the only way that your helmet will fit, or trying to get it into a bun, or whatever that single hairdo that you can get your helmet to fit. So it's a little thing, but having a helmet that fits properly, particularly with those sort of calls where you don't have a lot of time to get ready, is quite important as well.
And Steph, just on that, would you say you've heard anecdotally, I know I have, that women actually use their hair in a particular style to actually hold their helmet on in a certain space to stop it rolling around? And I mean, that would definitely affect your vision on the fire ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even just fit, people have hair and then all of a sudden it slips sideways and you've got a helmet that's really not terribly effective. The other part I know that you talked about and absolutely resonated was around jackets, having to try and get that jacket over your hips and trying to have it done up. So you can either end up wearing or swimming in a jacket where you can't see your hands, or you have a jacket that's quite small and you actually can't do it up around your hips. So you do it up and you sort of hitch it over your hips and then you lose that overlap, which becomes a sort of a WHS issue. Absolutely. I think that across what women are telling us is that it doesn't really matter the type of firefighting they're doing. It's the gear that fits that is most important, and that the themes we're seeing are consistent across both bushfire and structural PPC, and also consistent across volunteer, retained and career ranks. So last of all, what we asked women was, if you could tell a gear manufacturer anything, what would you tell them? Quinn, did you want to take us through what some of those respondents have said?
Yeah, well, Steph, I was actually going through the survey. I was overwhelmed with the amount of responses that we got. Quite often when we do these surveys and we ask for a response of extra information, we get a lot of data around the the checkbox sort of side of it. But I would say nearly 95% of respondents actually replied with what they would like. And there was just so much data to go through. And I thought the easiest way to just display it in a word bubble, just to get some of those key things out. But realistically, what most women wanted is just the acknowledgement that we are all different shapes and sizes. It's not a one size fits all world. There were some, women who were satisfied with their PPE. Some wore the men's gear because it did fit well, and that's what they found. But then others were, like if you've never tried on female specific PPE or had the option, you don't really know how well that would or how much better it could possibly be. But they just want the acknowledgement from manufacturers that, women have hips, we have larger chest areas, and it's not necessarily just adapting the men's clothes to make them fit us. We need actual gear that is fit for purpose. So wider hips, both from pants and jacket, just to accommodate different sizes, the smaller sizes.
I think one of the
pockets.
things, and that was definitely one of the things that stood out to me was the number of women that said that the men's gear had pockets and the equivalent women's specific fit didn't have pockets. That was definitely one of the things. Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so the option to even have the ability to try on sizing was also something that a lot of women reported, especially around boots. Quite often you just go off the size chart of what you previously had, and then that's what you have to work with. But different manufacturers have different sizing. So an option to definitely try on the clothing is something that a lot of women would definitely appreciate. But well, I mean, we could go on with the amount of responses, but just in general, even the option to customize, I think a lot of women would definitely appreciate all the different shapes and sizes. And even I think that would apply to a lot of the men as well.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the crux. Better fitting PPC helps everyone on the fire ground. If you're a more effective member of a team because your gear fits better, everyone wins out of that, whether you're male or female. So that brings us to the conclusion of our data, I suppose. This is an ongoing survey. There's lots and lots of data to come out and be analysed on it. If you are interested about participating in it, hop on our website and complete it. We're looking at disseminating this data a little bit further. So thanks for listening.
And if you're around the exhibition stage, WAFA does have a booth within the exhibition hall. Stop by our virtual booth. Check out what we've got on offer. We've got links available to our website, and we'll have WAFA members there available to take questions and have a chat to you if you're interested in any more information. And just like to big shout out to the Afac events team for making this possible in the virtual space, and also accommodating and providing a space for WAFA to be involved. Thank you.